We're going to get Ben, birthday boy Ben, back up here to talk about a road trip of sorts. Yeah.
I just want to tell Noel that I remember your son, and I remember his brother. Sorry, I just keep mistaking a lot. I just want to say that to start this story, you know, you probably have all been to like these little retreats and stuff like up in the mountains, and you go and you're sitting around a circle, or you're in a dinner and there's all these strangers around the table, and one of the questions oftentimes asked to break the ice, which people try to do, is to tell us something unique about yourself that nobody else would know. And I've always had a crutch, which is "Я говорю по-русски," which is I speak Russian, and so I've always used it. So the reason is I studied Russian in college, Harvey College here in town. And I went to Russia a couple times, and on my second trip, in 1999, it was in St. Petersburg, and it was 8 years after the fall of the Soviet Union. And it was, it was opening up. It was starting to become more westernized. Yeah, we had a McDonald's. It was cool. You could go get a Big Mac if you just wanted to feel American for a second. You could go and get your French fries. But it was still very oppressive and still very Big Brother. So, and you were always under this cloud of just this watchful eyes. You always had to have your stuff in order. You always had to kind of be on watch. So, anyway, I was there for this for 4 months already. So I knew the city really well, and I spoke Russian pretty well at that point. And I was part of this writers' workshop. So it got me to stay there for another month or two. And I was asked, as part of this workshop, to be the guide and to be the host for these two incoming students. And I said, fine. And so there was one guy from Kentucky and one guy from Massachusetts, and definitely not a Massachusetts accent, sorry. And so we're out and about, we're having dinner, we go to this great place, and we have borscht, and we're doing vodka, and it's just wonderful. We're having a lively conversation, and we go, and it's quite nice, because it's June. Is everybody in St. Petersburg in June? Okay, sorry. So it's the same latitude as Anchorage, Alaska, so it's white nights in June, meaning that Beli Noche. And Dostoevsky wrote a beautiful short story about white nights. Although beautiful and Dostoevsky probably don't go together very much. So Dostoevsky wrote a great short story about white nights. And so when you go, it's amazing because the sun sets, but it never gets dark. So from like 2 to 4, there's this window of time where it's like dusk to dawn. And it's just like, there's all this energy, all this liveliness in the city, and your whole body is sort of jamming and juicing, and you're just walking around the city and having a good time. And so that's what the three of us are doing after dinner. And we decided, because what I always love to do is go down the river. So St. Petersburg is on the delta of the river called the Neva. And so you can go down the river, and we got a bottle of Baltica beer, which is this beer that St. Petersburg brewed in St. Petersburg. And it was famous at the time because there's Baltica 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 9. So Baltica 1 through Baltica 9. And it was, what's crazy about it is, on the label, how in America, if you get a St. Adams or an IPA or whatever, they usually put the alcoholic content on there, and it'll be like 3.7 or 5.2 alcohol per volume. So Baltica 9, which is all I always do. Because I was 21, and it was 50 cents! 50 freaking cents! The exchange rate was great. So Baltica 9, instead of being exact, what they would say is not less than 15%, not more than 30%. So you never know what you got, but it always kind of tastes like but we got the good one that night. So we're down on the riverbank. And we're young, 21-year-old kids, and we're drinking our Baltica. We're getting totally inebriated, trying to use good words with my 5-year-old here. So we're down there, and we're having this lively debate about authors and literature. We're convinced, of course, that you have to be messed up and a psychopath to be a good writer. Because all we're into, of course, is Bukowski and Hemingway. So we think you just have to be totally screwed up. So we start acting like it, of course. We start working around with each other. We're walking these two kids back, because we have a workshop tomorrow. We have to wake up at some point. So we're walking back at like 2:30, 3 o'clock, and we're going to Nevsky Prospect, which is the new boulevard in St. Petersburg where they're staying. And we're walking back on this side street, and these beautiful Russian ladies, the ladies of the night. I mean, they're out and about, and they come up to us and try to proposition us. They want us to take them home with us, and so we're like, well, we're 20s, and we're very interested, and they're pretty beautiful. So we're like, school kids, and how much money? And it's like $50, $50. What? It's like 100 Balticas. 100 Balticas sounds like a lot more fun, frankly. And so we sort of like, I don't know, we just kind of shove off, but then Mr. Kentucky goes a little excited and he starts to negotiate. They will not negotiate with them. So, but it causes this strain, and we start to have this conflict, and everything starts to get a little boisterous and a little raucous. And just then, 3 policemen, 3 militia, is the word for it in Russian. And we were always told by my host family that if you ever get a run-in with the militia, you can either go to jail generally, or you can take 20 blows to the abdomen. And it was preferable to take 20 blows to the abdomen. Now, I didn't know there was a third option. Luckily, there was for me that night. So we're there, and so we kind of freeze, and again, they're just jerks. It's not. When you get a policeman here, you kind of expect them to serve and protect. You call them because you're broken. You expect them to come out and take care of you. But there, it's definitely not okay. So they come up to us and they're like, "Boy, you've been a little loud. Очень громкий. Что?" And they ask us to show us their documents, show them our documents. So, покажи ваши документы. And I'm a little smeared from the Baltica. And I just hate this lack of freedom because I'm an American boy, an island boy. And so I get a little courage and I just say, "You have no right." And I swear this is a free country. Perestroika. And I don't know how I got here, but the next thing I know is there's a cold, like ice cold circle on my forehead. And I'm on my knees somehow. I don't know if it's a reflex or like, if you force me down, but you definitely get on your knees. And I look up, and again, I don't know if the Russian police, I don't know if they use 9mm, but it was something like that. It was definitely pointed right in my head. And several things go on in your head all at once. Oh my God, I'm 20 years old. How the hell, this can't be like this. And how am I going to fit in my life? This is crazy. What the hell am I doing here? And like, even if he doesn't intend to like hurt me, he could get bumped or shoved or slipped or whatever. Done, vacation over. And so, that's before I peed my pants. I'm there on my knees with my wet Levi's, and he's got 2 goons with him, and the other 2 goons got Massachusetts up against the wall, and we got Kentucky down on the ground. And he comes up to me, and he just looks at me and he says, with his gun on my head, "I'm going to ask you again. Show us your documents." And I was full of moral indignation, when I told him before, I just look at our documents, and all that moral indignation melted away. And here's my briefcase, right here you go. Everything's in there, everything's in order, and everything was in order, of course, because everything has to be. So in Russia, when you're there, like, you have to tell them where you're going to be, and if you're somewhere else, they can shake you out, which they did. And so they're pilfering through all our stuff. And finally, one of the goons comes across what they're looking for, and we found out later it's three $20 bills. So that was the third alternative, luckily. And then as soon as they find that, they're all joke, they're like, nothing ever happened, we're like best buddies. We're like, let's me out. He's like, you're okay, but these guys are really not obnoxious. Can you please stop being so American? You're like, yeah, of course not. And so we're walking away, and the ladies in the line are totally snickering behind us. And we walk home with wet jeans. That's my story.